Yes, as from the West New York apartment, the fire truck rolls on by. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is What is the Power of We? And we are officially rolling in our vulnerability campaign. And so, a lot of our podcasts are now going to be talking about this theme of vulnerability and reclaiming vulnerability and what that means on this path to reclaiming and stepping into our inherent power. And we are so lucky to be joined today, of course, by the wonderful Stephanie, but also by the wonderful Sai. She's waving for those of you.
Excited and happy to be here.
We're so excited to have you, honestly. It's like we'll get into the story of how we met and how this all unraveled and things, but it's truly such an honor to have such a badass woman who's just pushing for like more and more badass groundbreaking things, not only in your professional life, but also on the mountaineering side and what it means to be a woman mountaineer and exploring not only your role in that, but women and the history of women in that. I'm so excited to get into this conversation with you. And we're so excited to have you.
So,
Yes. Cannot wait to hear from you. And I want to start and ask you a question because this is
okay.
kind of some of your branding is what does it mean to you to be a badass?
To me, like being a badass and having the slogan Badassery as a choice means that I don't let fear stop me. I don't let the world stop me. I don't let expectations of who I should be. That when I have a dream and a desire to do something, that I'm brave enough to go for it, despite what everybody else thinks and despite what the obstacles are. And, I look back through my life and my mom is a big influence for me. She is a badass as well and a very non-traditional woman. So I had a really excellent role model in that. But my whole life, I've kind of always paved a different path for myself. And, there were some huge catalysts in my life, like getting diagnosed with a heart birth defect when I was entering high school. It kind of derailed me as an athlete and set me on a different path. And I think, through studying abroad and running around the globe, it opened up my eyes to all these different possibilities for me versus being pigeonholed into growing up in a 15,000 person town in the Midwest of like, this is what you should do. I was like, no, I'm going to go be different. And for me, like, that was probably one of the most life changing catalysts I've ever had to shape who I am.
Wow. Yeah, I feel that. I'm here in the Midwest. And I mean, while I live in Chicago, which is very big, I know the Midwest where, people stay in these small towns and do what they're supposed to do. So I really see that in you and really honor that in you. And yeah, that's incredible.
Could you tell us a little bit about now what it is that you do, who you are, and how your badassery fits into that?
Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur for a really long time. Started off at a very young age, but back in 2017, there were some things going on in my life. I've worked in corporate America and things became very unstable. People were losing their jobs at the company. And I was like, man, I only have one income. I was used to working overseas and getting paid as an expat, tax free. My company paid for my house and my car. And I didn't have that in America. I had a mortgage and a car payment, and it was really scary. So for me, I was trying to problem solve and say, like, oh my gosh, I'm not happy about a lot of things. I feel all this fear around only having one income. I didn't have a partner in life. And I decided, okay, I need to do something about this. So I started investing in real estate. And I already had owned a home since 2012 when I moved back to the US. But I decided to take a more active role in that and start building my real estate portfolio. And in doing that, I now make more money as a real estate investor than I do in corporate America. I'm currently working on my corporate America exit so that I have more time, flexibility, and freedom in my life. Sometimes I think that like exit for me is scarier than the thought of climbing Everest because we have all these ideas about what's safe, you know? And that lure of corporate America and that stable income and the health insurance, kind of trapped me. But I have been moving into this entrepreneurial space, and it's been a really incredible journey for me, both hard, fun, a lot of learning, a lot of struggle, some mistakes, some major wins. But ultimately, because of the money I've been able to make, like I've been able to move to the mountains. I own multiple ski homes in ski towns and run very successful businesses there. But through that, like having that money and that flexibility and that freedom has allowed me, to go to Africa for a month with my mom. There was a point in my life where I was really unhappy. I stopped being a badass. I felt sorry for myself. I thought my glory days were over. Like I used to be this cool person who lived in like 9 countries on 5 continents, working with CEOs and heads of state every day, to a person who worked from home, skied a lot by myself and wasn't traveling, wasn't doing cool things. And I was like, okay, self, that's the most ridiculous story you've ever told. Like, you can make a choice to be that person, or you can go plan a fun adventure. So my mom and I did a 5-country tour in Africa. I fulfilled my dream of catching a tigerfish in the Zambezi River. We hung out with gorillas in Rwanda, and did these incredible safaris. So for me, it was like, wow, like being a badass is a choice. And it was that simple mindset shift of like, all you got to do is start changing your mindset and your actions. And then before you know it, you're not that having that feeling of lameness and boringness. Like you're doing things that make you more fulfilled. And, I've kind of been shifting in this journey. There were some things that happened in my personal life and with my family. My sister-in-law got breast cancer. So I decided to move back to Wisconsin to help them raise their 3 kids under 5. And it was a beautiful gift that I was able to give my family. But unfortunately, just dealing with those cancer struggles and all the things that I can do to unite and tear apart a family, I was left with a lot of PTSD. It triggered a lot of abandonment trauma. My dad committed suicide when I was 11. And through a lot of things that happened with my brother, when I was back there, it triggered a lot of that trauma for me. And, I had sold my house in Denver. My plan was to live half in Wisconsin and half in Vail. But after, luckily my sister-in-law pulled through and fully recovered from her cancer. But I decided it was the best choice for me to move back to Colorado. It's where I belong. It's where my heart is. The Colorado lifestyle is my essence. And I just made the decision that even though I love my family, the right choice for my mental and emotional health was to not be there full time. But I really struggled when I came back. I was drinking a lot. I had a hard time decompressing, made some bad relationship choices. I gained 15, 20 pounds. I wasn't doing any of the Colorado things that I loved. And I knew I needed to quit drinking, but I wasn't ready. And I told myself, like, when I'm ready to get my shit together, I will. And I decided, I think it was May of 2023, that I needed to stop drinking and lose weight and start focusing on myself. And I had some failed real estate deals that didn't go through. And I felt like my life was kind of in shambles and I was making all these decisions and kind of in a state of chaos. And I needed to recenter and find myself and get back to being myself because I lost myself. So I went on this really incredible trip to Idaho. Hazen Adele, who's a badass himself, was hosting a trip in the Sawtooth Range in Idaho. And it was camping, it was backpacking, it was hanging out with one of the most knowledgeable people about nature. And in that trip, I met some incredible people, but a lot of the women in that group were so inspired by me and thought I was so strong when I showed up and I thought I was weak. And they saw this quiet confidence in me. It was just really inspiring. And after I came home from that trip, I had this chance to decompress in nature and kind of see how other people were seeing me when I had a hard time seeing myself. And I was on Instagram and I saw a post by Nims Persia that he was leading a private expedition on Aconcagua. And I had climbed Kilimanjaro back in 2009. Like I'd never climbed a mountain before. I'd never hiked. I was living in Ghana at the time, and some friends that I knew through work said, "Hey, our friends are planning a trip to go climb Kili and do a safari." And the adventure in me said, "Hell yeah." But after I climbed Aconcagua, I started doing like a lot of high altitude treks, and I had set this intention that I wanted to go climb Aconcagua. I had lived in Argentina. I'd seen the mountain. It just was like the logical next step for me. But throughout my life, like I never really felt compelled to follow through on that plan or dream. And it wasn't until like reaching that point of my life, and like Nims is somebody who really inspired me with his journey and his story, and someone that the world looked at and thought like, this man is crazy, and he had a dream and he followed through with it. And I think too, like, I'm a go big or go home kind of person. So I was in terrible shape. I was overweight. I had no cardio base. My fitness sucked. I hadn't gone to the gym in years. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to get in shape to go climb with Nims. And there's no way I'm going to like not show up and do the work and then show up to Aconcagua and fucking embarrass myself in front of Nims Persia. So, it just seemed like the mountain called to me. And I, bought the book, Training for the New Alpinism and the Uphill Athlete. And I was literally so unfit that I had to start walking an hour 3 times a week, because I didn't want to overdo it, because I did go to the gym like a year before that, and I did one class and I couldn't walk for 10 days. It was awful. So it was like setting this intention to do it in a manageable way so that I could continue and I wouldn't get frustrated and quit. And, I was doing a lot of hiking, but I had this fear of like, am I doing this right? I knew I was not getting out of my comfort zone. Like I was literally only hiking. But Aconcagua, like success requires more than that. So I'd been kind of following Kate Seelman, who's a mountaineering and trekking coach and also another female badass. And now I can call her my friend and my coach and my mentor, and hopefully soon to be climbing partners. But I started training with Kate because she got me out of my comfort zone. And literally, I went from a state of no fitness and drinking 20 drinks a week and being overweight and lazy as hell to someone that maybe 10 days into training with Kate, I started seeing all of these returns of like my fitness performance and realizing how far I'd come in my journey. And like, I distinctly remember the moment where I was like, holy fuck, I can go climb Mount Everest. Like, I thought Everest was for other people. I'd been fascinated by that mountain. Like, I did Everest Base Camp trek. I've read pretty much every book and watched every documentary there is to like read and watch. And I thought the best it would ever get for me was reading about these climbers and watching them on movies and like going to base camp and seeing how they live and seeing them as little dots coming down the mountain and like hear the sounds and the power of the Khumbu ice fall. And to have that mindset shift of like, I am an athlete, because I wasn't behaving like an athlete, but changing my actions, changing my mindset, surrounding myself by the right community, like suddenly this new dream was born. And I still had to climb Aconcagua. But I thought like, if I really want this, I can make it happen. So, and then we get to Aconcagua.
Which is where we all met.
And like, I know we talked about this on the mountain, but, I told myself, like, what if I show up and like meet the person of my dreams and I fall in love there? And the universe is like, okay, let me do you 8 better. And sent me 8 other women on an expedition where there was only 3 male clients and there was 9 of us women on a high altitude mountaineering trip on a big mountain, which does not happen. Like maybe on a women's only trip through like expeditions, which is all women's expeditions. But like the universe was like, I'm going to give you more than you could have ever dreamed of. And then I met you guys and you have changed my life.
Oh, I so vividly remember sitting in our tent and sharing that story because we were both thinking the same thing. I was like, I'm so going to meet the right person, this person of my dreams there. And it's going to be so romantic. And then it's like you and me snuggled in a tent together all night. And I'm like, I really did get the person of my dreams. You
And her
know?
name is Stephanie, and I love her, and she is my ride or die.
We are just laying here and snow is falling, but we are inside the tent.
So romantic,
Oh,
especially on a full moon. If you recall,
ooh,
Do you
remember?
remember howling at
yeah.
the moon?
Yes, I do. I could never forget.
Rolling into what was it, Camp 3? Like
Yes.
19,000 some feet, howling like badass werewolf fishes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
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 It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I still, yeah, I think that that's so incredible how, we all thought, maybe one, maybe two women, and we ended up with this beautiful, powerful group of women. And like, we still talk like almost every day
Yeah.
and inspire each other. And yeah, I'm really, really grateful that
But
we
like,
all were united together.
it was also this moment of serendipity because um, Elite Exped had arranged a call, and it was you, Heidi, me, and Wani, but Wani didn't show up because he messed up the time. But it was like, oh my God. And then like I looked you guys up after meeting and I was like, wow, I knew I had this feeling in my gut. And it's like one of the reasons I also signed up for Nims's trip is that badasses attract badasses. And somebody with that kind of mindset and like goes for their goals that hard. Like I just knew that he was going to attract some next level people, but it was, seeing that, like you think it, but like when you see it in reality, I was like, oh my God, but like I never expected there'd be more women.
Yeah.
And I never expected like the level of women that I met. Like it was truly like mind blowing magic.
Yeah.
The universe just aligned to have us there. And then I was at the Gravity House, which is my gym in Vail, and I thought I saw Heidi, and I was like, I couldn't remember her name, but I was like, she was in front of me going downstairs. I was like, did I meet you on a mountaineering call? And she didn't hear me. And then I said it again, and she turned around, and we were like, oh my God, like, how does the universe align? Like, that I would go to the gym at that time in a tiny mountain town and we'd run into each other. So it was just like all these little magical moments that culminated in our big grand adventure.
Yeah.
I did not know about that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And like
Wow. Oh
the
my
chance to
gosh.
hug each other and like to connect before even stepping foot into Argentina and stepping foot on the mountain.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Not planned. I have no idea she was here. And I don't even know if she knew I lived in Vail.
Yeah, because she's in New York for everybody who is listening. Like, and they randomly met at this small gym in Vail, Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
During mud season.
Yes.
Not prime time Vail.
Yeah. What were some of your key takeaways, like your personal takeaways from Aconcagua? Like, what do you feel are some of the things? And I feel like it's hard to say, like, what is the thing? Because there's so many things. But if you had to like sum up, like maybe a couple of the different things that you discovered within yourself during, those 3 weeks when we were trekking Aconcagua and doing all of our rotations and summit and coming down and everything, what would those be for you?
I mean, one of them is that mountains are the great equalizer. And no matter how strong you show up mentally and physically, the mountains will humble your ass. Um, my playground in Colorado is, 14,000-foot mountains. I ski, like I can drink and ski at like 11, 12,000 feet. Um, and then I show up to Aconcagua and I get my ass kicked going from Confluencia to Plaza de Francia. So we're like 13,000 feet. And I don't know if it was like being a little bit like stomach bug or what it was, but no, I think Nims was like pushing the pace that day. Because he said he was like going fast and pushing us harder. I did not feel good. And like I even told Nims that, and he called me to the front of the line, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like the worst place to be. I'm like the freaking weakest link in the group right now. And like, this is my playground. If I'm feeling like this and it's this tough now, how the hell am I going to climb an almost 23,000 foot mountain? And it shook my confidence. You know, I know some of you came and talked to me. Wani came over and like sat with me and checked on me, but I spent most of that acclimatization hike laying under a rock, just like trying to hide from the sun and sleeping. And I did kind of like get a little bit better, and like you guys helped me eat some snacks. But for me, and I think a lot of the power of Kate Seelman's mountaineering coaching training was that you can get your ass kicked one day and recover and show up and do it again. And leaning on my team, being vulnerable, being honest about my physical state, my mindset challenges, that helped me. Because when you show up and you don't show up vulnerable, I feel like you miss out on a lot of opportunities for bonding, for growing as humans. Like pretending to be perfect all the time is not real. It's not helpful. And, you know, if I didn't show up with that vulnerability, I don't know if I would have had success on Aconcagua. So that was a big lesson for me. I don't know. I think also leveraging the power of how the brain works. This is something that I learned and was like a big part of my journey to happiness and like away from this depression and anxiety cycle, was that the human brain is literally designed to be negative. But you can break that subconscious pattern and start integrating happiness and gratitude and other things and change those neural pathways. But also understanding that the brain wants to keep you safe. So when it sees a giant mountain and it knows people die there, that you can get HAPE or HACE, which is high altitude pulmonary edema, or high altitude cerebral edema, which can be life-threatening. Your brain is like, I don't think you should be here. But being able to like narrate that conversation in your head and with your climbing team, you know, to understand like, I can overcome that. And sometimes it was talking to you guys. Sometimes it was distracting myself, listening to an earbud with reggaeton. I know, Steph, I lent you one day. Yeah. But I think it's also the lesson that when you show up as a mountaineer and a climber for an objective like Aconcagua, you have to be a strong individual, but you have to be a strong team member. And we all had our weak, vulnerable moments on that mountain, but we leaned on each other. Hell, I even asked Nims Persia to slow down and told me no. And then I went to you guys and I cried. But like, we were all worried about the pace being pushed, and we were worried about not having enough rest days before the summit push. I asked for what I needed. I did not get the answer I wanted, but maybe that was the right answer. Like maybe I did need Nims to push me and push us. And I think like one of the other big takeaways for me, there's a lot about like summit night and like descending from the summit that some memories are fuzzy. So I think like talking to you guys, you know, it's like we're sharing our perspective and reality, like piecing things together. But like Steph, you and I were roped together to Tenji, and I was having to stop, I think, more than the people in the rest of the group. And like, maybe you guys told me like I said a lot, like I wasn't feeling that great. And you and I fell behind the rest of the group, and it doesn't take that much of a gap to start appearing to make it so fucking hard to catch back up. And, you know, we were in the slower group, and like Nims and the fast group left a couple hours after us, and they caught up, and Nims said, Sy and Steph, if you don't hurry the pace, like you're off the summit. And I had all these moments of self-doubt and fear of like, and I said, Tenji, Steph, I don't know if I can go faster. I had no doubt that I could make it. I didn't think I could do it being pushed for pace at those kind of altitudes. And like my cardio base was not on the same page as a lot of the rest of our climbing team. But mountaineering is more about mindset than physicality. That's not an excuse to not show up with the right fitness, but your mind will make or break you and take you much farther than your body, like you think it can take you. But there was this moment on the mountain, and I think I said, Steph, like, do you really want this? Do you want to stop? And I don't know what would have happened if you said yes. Like, I probably would have been like, okay. But like, I didn't want it to be my decision. I wanted that responsibility on someone else. And thank God you didn't say yes. But you know, that's like
we were gonna say let's go down the whole time. I was like, please give me a permission slip.
But then I was like, fuck, like Nims needs to decide like if I'm going or not going. Like, I don't want the decision to be mine. And then all of a sudden, like Jane's leg stopped working and she fell. Like she was in front of you and I, and like we started catching up. But I think like I don't know if our pace got faster or if the rest of the group just started falling apart, or if it was some combination of both. But and I don't know like how close we were to the cave. It was dark and windy and all the things, but it was really scary to see Jane's leg stop working. I feel like not long after that, Nims told Valerie she couldn't go. And then suddenly, like, I don't know exactly where the Canaleta starts there, which is like a section of the mountain for those of you not familiar with Aconcagua, but it's a very steep section of scree. And you make one step forward, you like slide 5 steps back, and it is steep. And you're at like a very high altitude. But Steph, you started freaking going blind in one eye. You and I were roped together. You started becoming unsteady and kind of slipping and falling. And like I asked Tenji to unrope us because I was afraid of like being pulled down, where like if you slipped and it was just you and Tenji, like he could stop you. And my freaking earbud died and I had the other one, but I had so many pockets and I was cold, and like I had my gorilla hand gloves that we all laugh about. And yeah, but like in that moment, part of my training with Kate, like her mantra is outlast. And, you know, I changed it to fucking outlast, but I didn't have my music to distract me. Like I just went into Aconcagua mode. Like you guys were with me when I did my rap song. But in a lot of my training, like I called it Aconcagua mode, that like focus, that determination, like channeling into the moment. And I just repeated to myself in my head over and over, fucking outlast. And it was one step after one step after one step. And I kept looking up and I'm like, oh my God, the summit keeps getting farther away. Like I'm walking closer to it, but it's like not close. And somehow like we got up within like steps of the summit and I almost cried because I'm like, oh my God, I made it. And then I was like, pull your shit together. There's no time for crying, like focus. And like we got to the top and we weren't there for very long. Angeli, I felt like you were kind of out of it. Like, I don't remember what you said about your glasses or gloves or something, but because of the weather, like we were only up there for a short period of time. And unfortunately, there was a dead body at the top. And like, I've been in the military. I've seen dead bodies. I've seen people who've been blown up and shot. I've helped out and volunteered in wartime hospitals. So I've seen a lot of unpleasant things. So I didn't think it would bother me. And like, I didn't feel bothered. I felt like I was like pretty detached at the top because I was like, so like, oh my God, we're at the summit. But it was interesting because like when we were on our way, I think to Camp 2, or maybe it was like Camp 2 to Camp 3, we ran into the expedition team of that person who died. And it was a woman who died. So once Nims like called us off the summit and we were descending, I like told the team, whoever was around me, I was like, oh my God, like this is fucking dangerous. I did not feel like I was in my own body. For those of you that aren't climbers, down climbing is typically the most dangerous, risky part of an expedition because you're exhausted. Like we had gone 13 hours hard to the summit from Camp 3. And like the slower group, we only had 4 hours rest between Camp 2 and Camp 3. Nims pushed us hard. And like having the adrenaline leave my body, like, seeing the person who had died up there, the wind was apparently crazy. Like I thought we had good weather, and it was only until I saw the videos and talked to you guys that you were like, what are you talking about? And like that is how out of it I was. And I just remember like I had to focus so hard on my steps because we didn't have crampons on because there wasn't that much ice and snow, but there was like a couple sections, and like it was just this moment of intense focus on like get down safely. And like I kind of don't remember a lot after we reached the cave and kind of refueled. I feel like half the group disappeared. I feel like I was climbing alone a lot. I know Steph and like Heidi, you guys got whisked away down like a different path down the mountain. But at one point, like I was way slower than all the fast people, so they disappeared. And Pasang and I think Alina, Valerie, and Bonnie were all behind me. And I reached this moment where I was like, fuck, I don't know where Camp 3 is. And I had to wait for Pasang and like the girls to catch up. But I think that was like a triggering moment for me. Because like Tenji, he had my water, like I had no water because I did not listen to the gear guide, and I brought 2 big bottles instead of a little one and a big one. So some like key mistakes, but like I was left not sure where to go. And there was nobody around me except for this one random guy who was very out of it and like couldn't give me a clear answer. And I'm just tired. I'm exhausted. I'm alone waiting on this mountain for the rest of my team, and like worried about the rest of my team that like had to get whisked away down the mountain for all these crazy high altitude things that happened. And it was kind of scary. So eventually like Pasang and the girls caught up, and like I got to Camp 3 and refueled and packed my stuff. And I was feeling really good at that point. And but some of the other women on our team were on the struggle bus. So, and we couldn't find any guides. Like we ended up just kind of hiking down by ourselves. But I stayed with the rest of the team because at that moment I was really strong and they were more on the struggle bus. And then Hernan ran into us and he went down the mountain with us, and we got to base camp. And like that was the other part of my strength, like both mentally and physically. I didn't show up and collapse. Like NIMS pushed us to a level that you see for Himalayan expedition summit pushes. That's not a typical Aconcagua summit experience. You don't typically like go from Camp 2 to Camp 3 that fast and then go for the summit and then down climb the entire mountain. And like even when we got to Mendoza, I wore high heels out. Like I wasn't wrecked. Every time I showed up and climbed mountains before Aconcagua, I did not train. I did not prepare. I just showed up. And after that, I couldn't walk. I had injured hip flexors, injured knees, like muscles out of like unable to perform like normal walking. But because I prepared and because I invested in my mindset and my physical performance and got a mountaineering coach, I ended that trip very strong. And that was an incredible realization for me that when you show up for yourself, it's amazing what you see.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I mean, I'm kind of curious because it's shifted, I think, for me in the last year. It's almost been a year since we climbed that mountain, which is crazy. But kind of the meaning of the summit. What did it mean to you at the time? And has that meaning evolved over the last few months as you've kind of meditated on it and thought back about the experience?
So there's a quote by Conrad Anker, who's a famous mountaineer who's accomplished some just awesome climbs all around the world. But he said, the summit is what drives us, but it's the climb that matters. And I made my Aconcagua experience about the journey. It was about reconnecting with all of my Colorado lifestyle that I had gotten away from. I had been dreaming about doing a hut trip, and I've been in Colorado since 2012, and it had never happened until I started training for Aconcagua. And then I went on like 2 or 3 hut trips. And, you know, it was about that discovery that I could climb Everest if I want to, if I just keep working on my body and my mind in the right way. It was about all these beautiful connections with the people I met along the way. And the summit, you know, that's why you train that hard. And you also train because you want to be safe and you want to live and come back okay. But the summit really is what drives you. But I have friends from my coaching group training that didn't make the summit, some did. And we talked a lot about failure and what that means, because summit could be out of reach for reasons outside of your control, weather, political situations, natural disasters. You could get sick. You could get told you're too slow to go to summit. But it is a different feeling. Like, we were literally the tallest humans on the planet at that time. Like, it's an incredible experience. And for me, the more important part is the down climb. That is success to me. So I think that was like a big mindset shift for me, that like, you're only halfway when you're at the summit. And I knew that, like, in my mind, because of all the books I've read and the documentaries. But it is one thing when it's your ass and your life on the line, and you see your friends and summit sisters and like expedition team members, like their legs stop working, they go blind in an eye, they think that one of them might have haze. People get wrecked, and then it becomes a reality. So for me, I no longer celebrate at the summit. I celebrate when I'm down. Like, you can feel like some happiness, but you're only halfway.
Yeah. I mean, I might even like thinking about what it means to even come down a mountain. Steph, we talk a lot about what does reintegration and integration look like, and things. And I kind of almost felt like, for me, my coming down from the summit wasn't even when we got to Mendoza or the week we had in Mendoza. It was like coming back to, my West New York apartment and trying to get into quote unquote living again, trying to get back into life. That almost felt like the like down climb, and then like getting down, to me. I don't know if you had a similar experience.
The hardest part about my Aconcagua journey is what happened after. I think a big part of climbing that mountain and that objective is trying to overcome trauma and grief. And it did give me a lot of gifts, but climbing mountains does not get rid of trauma. It's a distraction. And when I came back to Colorado, because I had spent some time in Wisconsin and spent some time in Argentina with friends and my host family that I used to live with when I was an exchange student, and like went back to Wisconsin, and some things were not going well with my family. And I felt really overwhelmed. I felt like my energy, I didn't have a lot of energy for other people. And I had to make this cross-country trip with a German Shepherd and my cat and all my climbing gear back to Colorado after this like exhausting journey home. And then, I came back I had to start a new job, and it's a job that I used to do. And I thought the transition would be easier. I had to transition back into my entrepreneurship, and there was some shit that happened with one of my Airbnbs that I was fighting with Airbnb. I came back with the expectation that I was going to launch these new businesses, and like I fell apart. And I think it was really hard for me, because after like my achievements on Aconcagua, where I literally was like the master of my body and my mind, to coming back and feeling like I couldn't even breathe. Like, one of the most basic physiological functions that you can do without thinking, I couldn't do. And I watched you and Steph start What's the Power of We, and like Alina climb in the Himalayas, and like Jordan going to Everest. And like, I couldn't fucking breathe. And like, Steph, I know you helped connect me with a somatic coach, but it's like, the harder I tried to make myself feel safe, and the harder I tried to breathe, the worse it got. And like, I was supposed to start training for the Alps, and I had to back out of that training and like put it on hold. And like, there was just all these moments where I just like felt like a failure. And I didn't understand like how I could be this person that was that strong and then be this person that was this weak. And it's honestly like been one of the hardest like mental and emotional struggles of my life. Like reconciling that and like feeling all of this failure and like pushing through it. And then you guys know I got viral bronchitis and like they thought I developed asthma, but it was actually pneumonia. And I just feel like I kept getting my ass kicked in all these capacities and like my plans were getting derailed and like I almost didn't go climbing the Alps with you, Angeli. And like, I don't know. I just didn't understand like how I could be like that version of myself and then this version. And it's been a really hard journey, like working through this. But I think the overall lesson is that like trauma doesn't go away because you climb mountains. Like you have to put in the work in the other ways to move through it. And like I've been honest with you guys. I've been honest with Coach Kate, with my family, and like with myself to work through this. But it's still an ongoing struggle. Things are getting better, but it's still hard for me to like deal with.
Thank you. Thank you for leading such an important conversation with so much vulnerability, because I know for a fact you're not alone. And it's also something that is not talked about in the mountaineering community. You know, what we see is people get home and then they plan something next and they're doing this and that. But inevitably, you know, what goes up must come down. And the higher you go up, the higher you go down. And I think that you sharing this is really going to touch a lot of people who felt like they've had to suffer in silence because they're supposed to be okay, because they just did this big thing, because they're strong, they're tough. But in actuality, you know, this is very, I believe this is very common, but it's very hidden. So thank you for bringing a light with your vulnerability to this topic, because by you sharing, so many people are going to feel so seen.
I mean, I can only hope that it does help people, but I call it the concept of participating in your own self-rescue. This is something that I learned about whitewater rafting in Colorado, that if you fall out of the boat, yeah, you're wearing a life vest, but like you have to swim to safety. You have to swim to the shore. You have to swim to the boat. You have to reach out for that oar that somebody hands you. You can't just lay there and hope somebody comes and rescues you. Like we're all responsible for our own healing and our own journeys. And we can either sit back as, you know, and let the universe take all of our power away and feel like stuck in this helpless, I think, state of victimhood or, you know, whatever is going on. But I think like believing in yourself and loving yourself enough that even when you are on that struggle bus, to say like, on the days where I feel like I don't want to be alive, I'm going to keep going and like going to ask for help. And, you know, like mental health is a journey. It's not a destination. And, you know, a lot of what happened post Aconcagua left me in shambles, thinking like maybe I'm not cut out to be a mountaineer. But I think, you know, doing a lot of work with you, Steph, and like your gift, like my nervous system was so deregulated from all the things that happened with my family, and climbing is very empowering, but it is also scary and very dysregulating to the nervous system. And like having some grace for myself and understanding that like I'm not a weak person, like things were happening to my body and my nervous system that are making me feel this way, and that I have to start doing the things to help my body feel safe, my nervous system feel safe, to be able to breathe. I had to go on medication. I had to like talk to friends and family. I've worked with a somatic coach. I was doing acupuncture. I was doing chiropractor work. And like, I'm in a much, much better place. Like, I'm training to go climb the eighth highest mountain in the world. It's the first mountain that's an 8,000-meter peak, or a peak over 26,000 feet, that was summited by an all women's expedition team in 1974. And it's the Mountain of the Spirit. And I didn't let that moment of my life define me. And I'm still working through it. But like I said, it's the journey, it's not a destination.
Yeah. And when I see you and I hear, your tagline, badassery is a choice, this moment right here with you sharing this is what I see. And this is how I feel you embody it, because you are embodying the depths of vulnerability. You are having the self awareness of, I'm not okay and I need help. And you're doing all these things. You're still asking for what you need and asking for help in all of these different modalities. And you're still chasing down the big vision, the dream in, entrepreneurship, in real estate, and in mountaineering. And you're like, I'm going forward. And, we talked even before this call started, right? Sometimes it's one step forward, 10 steps back, but then the next day, maybe you take 20 steps forward. So it all equals out to every single day. There
Yeah.
is this relentless forward motion. And the way that you embody that is just stunning. And so when I see you say badassery is a choice, to me, how I feel when you say that is seeing you in this full vulnerability of, I can have all of these things, I can have all this happening, and I can still keep moving forward every single day. And some days it's faster than others. And some days it might be like sitting up and like crawling. But
Some days it was hibernating and hiding from the world.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I'm going to at least open my fucking eyes every day. Like, I'm going to do the things I need to do in order to do the things I need to do. So thank you for this embodiment.
Thank you. And I think an important thing for people to realize is that it's easy to be a fucking badass when everything is good and you're on a high and you're literally on top of Aconcagua, or whatever, mountain, metaphorical. And you guys, like, I love making mountaineering references and applying that to real life, but like, it's the power of community. Because when I felt like I was my weakest, I reached out to the people around me that were strong. And vice versa, when I see people struggle and I'm doing well, I make time for them and I help them get back to a better place. And that's being a good climbing teammate, that's being a good friend, it's being a good person, that we all have this shared human experience. Being a human is not always easy and it is not always fun. There's a lot of beautiful moments about life, but it's not all like roses all the time. But having those people to remind you that you are a badass when you don't feel like it, that helps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Sai, thank you so much for sharing so much of you. Steph said you embody. At the beginning of this conversation, I said we were going to talk about how vulnerability can, be a step on the way to stepping into your power. And actually, I think what I've learned from you today is that vulnerability isn't a step on the way to power. It's completely intertwined with power. And what I see in you is, even as you feel your most vulnerable, as you have felt, what you perceive as your weakest, you actually, as Steph said, embody power. You embody badassery, even in those moments when you don't feel like you do. And so I just want to thank you so much for sharing, all of you, and sharing this time and space with us. And I wish we could be in person, because there have been just so many times when I wanted to just reach out and like squeeze you, hold your hands.
But I think
really,
and like the mission that you both have and the power of we, and how this even started, like what you're doing is so powerful and it is so helpful. And there's so much good that we can do in the world to help combat evil. And the things that happen to people that they do not deserve, and to help them reclaim themselves and their identities and their own brand of badassery. That is what it's all about. And without vulnerability, it is not possible, because all you're going to see without that is a facade that is not real.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
I love you so much. Thank you so much.
I love you
You
too.
too.
I'm like wanting to cry. I love you both so much. Oh, I'm just thinking of like all of the very tender moments that we've shared together. And I just want to express like my gratitude for each of you.
Thank you. I wish we could hug.
We will in January.
Hell yeah, we will.
It'll actually, it could be reunion right around Summit Day.
Oh my God. We
There
need
you
a
go.
summit anniversary.
We need a
go.
Summit Sisters anniversary in Vail, Colorado. Who wants to come to the party?
You know, and it's amazing, like that Coca-Cola that Tenji kept giving us. Like, I now have this like special relationship with Coca-Cola.
I can only drink like regular full sugared Coca-Cola if I'm really feeling it, like in some sort of way. I need to be feeling like this needs to be fed to me. That's how I need to feel to drink.
I mean, literally at those altitudes, it's like the nectar of the gods.
It is. And it was like a little slushy. And I'm like, I just need someone to like feed me slushy Coca-Cola every time I feel.
At Coca-Cola, this is why you should sponsor all of us for our next club.
Right here, pitch.
But I can guarantee you that Coca-Cola will be a part of all my summits.
Me too. All of us. Yes.
And you want to see some real tears, you'll see real tears if that thing freezes. I'm just like licking the Coke bottle.
I know we
Oh
only
my
have
God.
I know we only have a couple minutes, but is there anything else that that we didn't touch on in the last little bit of time that you wanted to share?
Any last words or
Just thank you for letting me reconnect with you guys and to share my story and my journey. My story and journey is not over, you know, but I'm really excited about what I have coming up, and it's building my business and launching into full entrepreneurship. And I've got a lot of objectives on the way to get ready for Manaslu, and I'm on my path to Everest, and I'm hoping at spring of 2026, but it feels exciting to go for my dream.
Hell yeah.
and we are right there, like cheering you on.
If you guys can be at base camp when I'm there, oh my God.
No, we might even do you one better and join you up to Camp 3. So
yeah.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah. All right, my love. Thank you so much. Thank all of you. Thank you for this beautiful, beautiful podcast. And thank you for your vulnerability. And thank you for sharing. And I cannot wait to get this in the hands of not just mountaineers, but women everywhere, to show them like what it really means to be a badass, and that badassery is a choice. So thank you.
Absolutely. Love you guys.
love you. Okay, we can stop the recording now, but you can stay